Hello and welcome to another episode of the Adobe Creative Suite Podcast. My name is Terry White, and in this episode we're going to take a look at how to get started with Lightroom 4, the 10 things beginners want to know how to do. It's kind of keeping up with a series I've been doing. I started with Photoshop, and then I did InDesign. Now it's time to do Lightroom. So let's jump right in and talk about the 10 things that beginners want to know how to do right off the bat. So when you open up Lightroom for the first time, it will open up to basically an empty catalog. Think of the catalog as Lightroom's document. So when you open up a Word file and you start typing, you're typing in a Word document. Lightroom's document is the catalog. And you can look at catalogs as basically a way of organizing like photos. So for example, I might have a family catalog, I might have a work catalog, I might have a landscapes catalog, I might have a portrait catalog, basically whatever kind of work you're doing and how you want to divide that work up. You usually do it in multiple catalogs. So you can have as many catalogs as you want, and those catalogs will reference the photos that are on your hard drive. So Lightroom doesn't really store anything, any photos in the catalogs themselves. The catalogs are like databases keeping track of all the metadata about the photos, where the photos are, the previews, the adjustments you make, so forth and so on. So I hope that clears up some of the confusion right off the bat. So the first thing people want to know is once you get this new empty catalog open, and by the way, if you want to create a new one with a specific name, you can go ahead and do that. But once you get your new empty catalog, the first thing you're going to want to do is how to import your photos. Now there's an import button here you can just click on if you already have photos on your hard drive that you want to import into Lightroom. Or if you've got a memory card or a camera connected. So I've got a memory card here from a shoot that I did today. I'm just going to plug that memory card into my card reader, give it a few seconds to get recognized, and without me doing anything, Lightroom says, oh, you just plugged in a memory card. I assume you want to import some photos. So if I were to scroll through here, it's 424 photos. They're all, basically ready to be imported. And if I didn't do anything else but click import, it would then copy those photos to my hard drive in whatever default folder it was set up to do. And it would then show me those photos in Lightroom. So it's going to do two things: copy them off the card, put them in a folder. That folder is nothing special, it's just a folder on my hard drive, and then it will show me those photos. Well, we're going to do some changes here. First of all, I don't want all of them, so let me uncheck everything. We don't need that many for this tutorial, so I'm just going to basically grab the first few here. Now, once I select those, I still have to check them so that they actually do get imported. If you don't check them, then nothing will happen. Now let's talk about the workflow. So it's taking it from my Nikon D4 memory card or folders or whatever you choose. It's then going to do one of these things, which I'll talk about in a second, and then they're going to end up here. So let's talk about the middle part. There's copy as DNG, copy, move, and add. Now, move and add won't even let me choose it because it assumes you would never want to do that from a memory card. You wouldn't want to move them off the card. You basically want to copy them. And you wouldn't want to add them and reference them to the card because most likely you're going to erase that card at some point. So my two choices really are copy or copy as DNG. What's the difference? Copy will just copy them as is. And this is the one you'd use for JPEGs. If you're shooting in JPEG, you just click copy. But if you're shooting in RAW, you have a choice of copy or copy as DNG. Copy will just copy the native RAW file format from the manufacturer. In this case, I'm shooting Nikon, so that would be a .nef file. If I were shooting Canon, it'd be a .cr2 file, or whatever manufacturer's RAW format you want. So instead of me copying the proprietary RAW format, I actually tend to copy as DNG. This will copy the files and convert the copies into digital negative format, which is a non-proprietary RAW format that works across multiple software solutions, multiple hardware solutions. So I like to keep them non-proprietary. You don't lose any quality, you don't lose any data. It's basically copying them in in an all-inclusive format that doesn't have to have a sidecar file and all the other tendencies that we have with RAW files. So copy as DNG. Where will it put them? It's going to default to my pictures folder, and then we go down here to tell it what to do. So I don't mind them being in my pictures folder, but I do want them into a subfolder, and I want that subfolder to be called Candace. Actually, we'll do it Candace Lynn. That's her name. So put them all in one folder called Candace Lynn. It will default to by date. I tend to not like that. I just like them all in one folder by the name of the shoot or the occasion. And this one I kind of skipped over here is a metadata template. So with none selected, which is the default, it'll just bring in all your images. But if you choose one of your templates or make a new one, you can then go in and say what you want it to import and put in each file's metadata. So like your name, your copyright, your website, all of that information. And then you can save that as a template. So I've got one here called Terry White. And you can also put in whatever keywords you want to do. So I could say fashion, for example, because this was a fashion shoot. And it will put that keyword onto every single photo, kind of saving you time from doing that once they're in. So now I'll just go ahead and click import. And copy as DNG, of course, takes a little longer than copy because it actually has to do the conversion on the fly as it's copying. If these were JPEGs, they'd already be copied by now. It'd already be done. But we'll just give it a few seconds to render these last few. And this is why I didn't do 400 and whatever it was. And you'll notice that briefly it said ejected the card after import. So now I can take the card out of my card reader because it's already ejected it from the operating system. So now we have these 14 photos in a folder called Candace Lynn on my hard drive, which is where I told it to put it. And those 14 files or pictures are in that folder on my hard drive. They're not in Lightroom. They're basically referenced by Lightroom, but they're in a folder. Now, that was the first thing, how to import. The second thing we're going to talk about, and we're actually going to move over to the studio to do this, and that is how to shoot tethered. So let's follow me over to the studio. Let's go check it out. The next thing people want to know how to do in Lightroom is to shoot tethered. So I moved over to the studio. I've got my Nikon D4. Lightroom supports tethered shooting with select Nikon and Canon cameras, basically the most popular ones. And it supports tethering via USB. So we're taking a nice long USB cable, plugging it into the USB port of the D4, and then we're just going to go ahead and turn the camera on. Now we'll head over to Lightroom, and in Lightroom, just go down from the file menu to tether capture. Start tether capture. You can name your session whatever you want. So we'll name this one Candace. And we'll just go ahead, if you have a custom metadata template that will apply all your metadata, you can go ahead and pop that in now, or create a new one on the fly. So that'll put things in like your copyright, your location, your website, things like that in each picture as you take it. You can also go ahead and put in any keywords you want. So we'll just go ahead and click OK. And because it recognized the camera, the tether capture is here, ready to go. And of course, the first thing you're going to want to do is get this out of your way because it's really in the way. So let's go ahead and hit Command T on the Mac, Control T on Windows, and now we're ready to shoot. Hi, Candace. So, as we take pictures, they get transported directly into Lightroom, and if we go to Loop View, we can see them as they come in. Here we go. All right, I think it's working well. You're not going to get silly on me, right? Maybe. Oh no. All right. So as you can see, that's tether capture. That's usually the next thing people want to know how to do in a Lightroom. So let's head over to our next topic. Okay, welcome back. We're back from the studio. We just did our tethered capture. So you saw two ways to bring in your images. One via import. The other is for shooting directly into Lightroom as you're capturing the images with tethering. Now that we've got those images from our tethered capture, we can now go in and talk about the third thing people want to know, which is what's the difference between folders and collections and I don't understand. What is this? Catalogs, folders, and collections. So, okay, we talked about catalogs in the very beginning. We're still in our default Lightroom catalog that I created from scratch. And that catalog will contain as many pictures as we import in it, meaning reference them. Folders are the actual folders on your hard drive. So those are the ones that, again, this Canvas folder, I think on my other catalog I had the Canvas Lin folder, but here are the 31 shots we tethered capture. And then collections are the groupings of those shots that you create within that catalog. So for example, if you shot a family vacation and you went to the beach and you went to a museum and you went to the park and you did 300 pictures of all three of those things, well, you might want to put all the beach shots together in a collection. You might want to put all the park shots together in a collection. You might want to put all the pictures of the kids together in a collection. So think of it as if you're an iTunes fan. For example, you listen to your music. Your library would be the catalog. It's got all your music in it, every song you've ever had. But then you don't want to listen to all, 6,000 songs at one time. So you make playlists in iTunes so that you can organize your music so that you can listen to whatever you want to listen to when you want to. The same song can be in multiple playlists. Same thing applies here. When you make a collection, you're basically just saying, oh, I want to only look at these few photos grouped together with these other few photos at any given time. Maybe I want to print them, look at a slideshow, so forth and so on. So that's what collections are. Now let's talk about making some of those collections. So let's go in and let's say that I actually want to, I'm going to cover another topic along the way. We're going to talk about flagging, rejecting, rating, and labels. That's the next thing that people want to learn. But then we'll come back to, once we've done that, and actually create a collection. So we got 31 shots from our tethered shooting session. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the letter E to go into loop view. And I'm just going to start reviewing these just by simply hitting the arrow key on my keyboard. You can also toggle them with the arrow keys. Oops, I believe you can toggle them with the wrong arrow keys. Sorry about that. There we go. Let's get our tools up here and get our navigation tools. There we go. So we can toggle them back and forth with the arrows on the tool panel here or the arrows on the keyboard. So I always do it from the keyboard because that's where my hands usually are. All right, so I can say that, whether I like this picture or not. So that's what we're really trying to narrow down is out of those 31 shots, which ones do we really like? And everyone has a different method because Lightroom gives you multiple methods to do this. Some, and the most common, is the pick flag. Hitting the letter P will mark a picture as a pick. You like that one. Hitting the letter X will mark it as a reject. You do not like that one. You want to get rid of that one. And of course, hitting the letter U will unflag it, meaning don't make it a reject, don't make it a pick. So that's a simple like it or dislike it method. There's also the star ratings. 1 star would be a dislike. 2 stars, kind of really still bad. 3 stars, well, it's okay. 4 stars, it's pretty good. 5 stars, you love it. That's just my simple method of what the stars would be for, but you can use them any way you want. And you can do a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5 to rate your image 5 stars or not. And hit the number 0 to remove the ratings. Last but not least, you also have color labels. So if we, let's see if I can bring up my color labels here. You have color labels that are red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. So I tend to use these mostly while I'm shooting. So if it's a green, that means I liked it. If it's a blue, that means the client liked it or the model liked it. And those are the two colors I usually use. So I do that as my kind of first wave of pictures I like. And then out of those greens and blues, if the client says, I want these 5, those become the picks. So that's when I go back and actually make the pick flag. So you use your own workflow, whatever method you like best. So let's use my labels for now. So I'm going to turn the labels off. And I'm going to say that, and by the way, if I don't give it a label, that just simply means it's just okay. I don't hate it or like it. It's just okay. So I'm going to make this one just okay. I kind of like this one. Let's make that one a green. This one looks like it's slightly out of focus, so I'm going to go ahead and reject that one right off the bat. Obviously, the flash didn't fire on that one, so we'll reject that one. And that one's just okay. That one's okay. I kind of like the eyes on that one. Make that one a green, 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 and that one's just okay. Okay, okay, green. That's a reject. Eyes were closing there. Don't like the eyes looking away. That's another reject. That one's just okay. Green. And you kind of go through this. This is what you quickly do right after you shoot. Love that one. That's a green. That one's okay. Like that one. Love the smile on that one. Okay, okay. Being silly here. Reject that one. It's out of focus. And we're done. So we have some that we like, some that were just okay, some that were definite rejects that we want to delete. Now let's get rid of the rejects first. So we're going to hit the letter G to get back to the grid. We can also make our thumbnail smaller for this video so we can see more of the images. And the ones that are grayed out are the ones with the rejects. So now I want to get rid of them. I'm never going to use them. No sense in keeping them. So I'm going to hit Command Delete on the Mac. That'd be Control, I believe, Backspace on PC. And that will bring up your deletion option. So, hey, you've rejected 5 photos. Do you want to delete them from Lightroom? Or do you want to delete them from your hard drive or just remove them from Lightroom? You always want to delete them from your disk. Why keep them around? You're never going to use them. If you remove them, Lightroom will forget about them, but they'll still be on your hard drive. So yes, we want to delete. So now it's moved those photos to the trash or recycle bin and taken them out of Lightroom. Now we're left with either the ones that were just okay or the ones we really liked. So now I want to narrow it down to the ones we really liked. So we're going to go Attributes, click the green flag. Here are the 9 photos out of the 26 that we liked. And now that I'm looking at them, I kind of don't like this one as much as I did at first. So we're going to hit 8 or remove the green flag from that one. So now we're down to 8. And we're going to take these 8 and then we're going to say, back to the collection thing, I want to group these together as my favorite candid shots from this shoot. So we're going to create a new collection. It will automatically assume that you want to include the collected or the selected photos. We're going to call this Candice Faves, and we'll click Create. So now those 8 photos are in their own little collection, their own little world, outside of the 26 photos that we still have. So we can keep narrowing it down. We can keep making collections. We can make it maybe a collection just of portraits and a collection of just of landscapes. We can make a collection of head turned to the right versus head turned to the left versus head turned or straight on. You can make any collections you want and use the same photos over and over again. So maybe I want to make a collection of smiles. So let's do that. So we'll say that those 3 pictures are smiling pictures. So we'll say make a collection. Candice Smiles. And there you go. So now those 3 photos are not only in the Candice Smiles, they're also in the Candice Faves. And of course, they're in the main folder on the hard drive because that's where they live. So that's how collections are made. And by the way, if I left off a smiling picture, I can still drag it right in to the Candice Smiles picture, or collection, I should say. So you can manually add photos to the collections after the fact. All right, so we talked about 4 things so far. So now let's get to developing. So let's say that we really want to work with this particular photo, but we want to make it a little bit better. So you have a develop module which makes non-destructive adjustments. This is what really makes Lightroom great, because you can do all this and never really damage your photos. So if we head over to the develop module just by clicking it, that will bring up the one photo we have selected. You can do more than one if you want. And this is where you get to make tonal adjustments to your photo. So for example, I could go in and I can say, you know what, the white balance is off on this photo. So I'm going to select the background and just, there we go. I've made a white balance adjustment. And it will keep a history of everything you do from now on to this photo. And you can always step back through your history and undo things or just readjust them. I can see that I'm hitting some walls here on my shadows, which is fine, just a little spot there. And on the jewelry and the highlights, that's to be expected. But if I want to adjust that, I can bring that in just a bit, which we're not going to gain a whole lot back because of that specular highlight there. Now we can also adjust things like the overall exposure if we wanted to. We could adjust a variety of things. I usually like to pump up the vibrance a little bit when there's color in a photo. And I also like to go in and do something like sharpening. So we can say sharpen faces, and that will sharpen. It's like a little preset that will sharpen the faces of your portraits. So we can keep doing all of these non-destructive adjustments and go through and turn them on or off whenever we feel like it. Now there's also one more kind of adjustment you can do, which is localized. Everything up here is kind of a localized adjustment. So I could say, for example, click this brush, and this is the adjustment brush, and I can say, I can either use one of the presets, or I can just adjust them manually. So I can say I want to brighten up the photo, but only in certain areas, maybe the hair. So of course we can bring down the size of this brush just using our bracket keys. And we can say, you know what, just lighten up the hair. And that's changing the exposure of the hair. Now we don't like this because it's making our hair too light. But that's the beauty of this, because now that little control point we can adjust further. So we can make it brighter, which we wouldn't want to do, but we can also make it darker. We can make it not as bright. Maybe we'll like it a little bit more, just a little brighter. So that's what the adjustment brush is for, and you can make new adjustments and control new things. And it's really cool to be able to do this directly in your image, and again, have it be non-destructive, because at any point I can just delete that control point and get rid of that adjustment. So that is the fifth thing that people want to know how to do, and that is developing. Now, if we head back to the library module, those adjustments will be made to that photo. We can tell it's got adjustments now with the plus minus symbol here. And that just lets me know that there's been adjustments made to that photo. Now, let's go ahead and head over to our next one, which is, what if you want to do something that Lightroom can't do? Perhaps you want to edit your photo in Photoshop. So for example, the first thing I'm going to have you do before you even attempt to do the edit is I'm going to have you change a preference. So let's go to our preferences. And you're looking for the tab that says External Editing. And you want to go in and make sure the file format is it was defaulting to TIFF. You want to change it to PSD. I just prefer getting back Photoshop files when I'm working in Photoshop that I can always go back. They'll have all the layers, all the adjustments and everything. And although a TIFF can contain layers, to me, there's nothing safer than working with a PSD in Photoshop. So if your file format is on TIFF, change it to PSD, and then you're all set. So we'll close this preference. Now, how do we do the edit? Well, we can right click on the photo and say Edit in Photoshop, or we can hit Command E on Mac, which is the way I do it, or Control E on Windows, and that will open the photo up in Photoshop. Now, anything you do at this point, so for example, if I wanted to start retouching this, here, let's zoom in a little bit here. And actually, let's grab our, I want to grab our spot healing brush here. There we go. All right, so we'll grab our spot healing brush, and now we don't want to get rid of the mole, but we might want to get rid of any other blemishes that we want to take care of here. And of course, we're doing this, now we are doing this in a destructive format here because we are actually editing in Photoshop. Now, yes, you can make a layer. Yes, you can protect yourself more by doing those kinds of things first. But anything we do here, we're actually editing the pixels, whether you're editing them on the background or you're editing a copy of the layer. And of course, this is the kind of stuff that Lightroom can't do. Although Lightroom has a spot healing tool, or it's rudimentary compared to what you can do in Photoshop. So for example, another thing I like to do is we'll choose our sharpen tool. And I like to really, here, let's make our brush bigger. There we go. I like to really sharpen the eyes. There we go, get those nice and sharp, nice and bright. Also the lips and perhaps the teeth or the jewelry. And again, things that Lightroom doesn't do. Now I would go in and do a lot more in this photo, do a lot more adjusting on the eyes, but this isn't a Photoshop tutorial. It's a Lightroom how-to. So this is just basically how to get your image over to Photoshop, do the kinds of layering and things that Lightroom can't do. Once we close this image and save it, when we return back to Lightroom, there will be the original, in this case raw file, because when we tether capture, we don't do it as DNG. It just comes in as raw. And then the edited Photoshop file with any layers you've added, anything you've done in Photoshop will be there. Now at this point, what I normally do, since I'm in a collection, is I get rid of the original because I don't need it in the collection, so I just delete it. Now it's not deleting it off the hard drive, it's just deleting it out of the collection, because then I'll know when I'm done and I look up and see all PSDs, I know that I'm done doing all my editing. And if I ever want to get back to that photo, I can hit Command E again, and I can edit the original PSD file, get right back to Photoshop, and continue working on this PSD. So if there were any other adjustments I wanted to make, I can do those adjustments here. Close, get back, and I've made my saves. So that was number 6, editing in Photoshop. Now the next thing I want to talk about, because it's going to impact what we do going forward, and that is creating a custom identity plate. People always ask me, how did you get your name up there in the upper left-hand corner? And that's because I've created a custom identity plate. So you can do it either with text or your own logo image, saved as a PNG file, for example. And I'm going to just go in and say, under the Lightroom menu, we're going to go to Identity Plate Setup, and we're just going to enable a custom one. Now by default, it will be the name of your user account. So it just called me Adobe because that's my user account. I can also go in and say that I want it to be a graphical one. And now I can locate the file, which I've stored over here on this hard drive. And I should have an identity plate PNG file. There it is. And it's just a logo I've created to kind of fill in this area. And when I click OK, now it's not Lightroom 4 anymore, it's Terry White Photography. And of course, again, you can do that with just text if you wanted to, and you can choose whatever font and colors you want. Or if you actually have a logo you want to use, you can use that. So that was, I believe that was number 7, creating custom identity plates and how to put them in Lightroom. Now, why is that important? Because now we're going to talk about number 8. So let's say I want to print these 4 photos. And we head over to the print module. Well, in the print module, you also have templates. So for example, you have some Lightroom templates. For example, let's say we wanted to do 4 wide. And you have the ability to include an identity plate. This is why identity plates are important, because you may want to use them in your printing. Now, this is just kind of a cute template to work with. In this case, I wouldn't actually use this particular one, but you get the idea. That's why I said we're going to do the identity plate first. Now, if you want to do your own settings or your own setups, you can do that either as a single image contact sheet, a picture package, or a custom package. And a custom package lets you design it with whatever sizes you want, And we also have some picture packages too that'll go in and let you do the standard thing you see at school with your kids, or at a like a Sears photo, where you can create, oh, I want one 5x7 and 6 wallet size, so forth and so on, or custom, which you build your own. So that is printing and output. And of course, you don't have to print multiple up on one page. If you want a single 8x10, that will give you a single 8x10, and it will print 4 pages, 4 8x10s. And you can go in and make your own adjustments whatever way you want. So if you want more of a left margin, perhaps you're putting these in a binder, just make more of a left margin. If you want a stroke around your images, turn on the stroke border and add a stroke around your images. So you can do any of these things, and a variety of ways of printing, including using the identity plate if you want. You can even put the identity plate right on the image so that it prints with your logo. And last but not least, you can print to your own printer, or if you're going to send these out to be printed, you can say print to a JPEG file and I'll upload it to my print service provider. And now if I say print to file, that's what it'll do, which I normally use Adobe RGB, and away we go. So that is printing, number 8. So now let's talk about number 9. Let's go back to the library menu for a minute, or library option here. And let's say you just simply want to give your client these 4 files as JPEGs, or you want to put them on your website. Well, as raw files, they're, first of all, in the wrong format. No, you can't put raw files on a website, at least not easily. And they're way too big. They're, these are like 10, 15, 20, 30 megabyte files. So we want to take these 4 files and make smaller versions of them so that we can email them out or send them out. So we're going to say File, Export, and let's see if there are any Lightroom presets. There's a couple. There's one called For Email, which if we do that one, let's see what it's going to do. It's going to make it a JPEG, sRGB. It's going to drop the quality down. It's going to resize it to the longest edge being no longer than 500 pixels. It's going to strip out all the metadata and just put the copyright information in there. So that's one that's there by default. But let's say that we want to do our own. So let's go back out to the hard drive. That's where we're going to put them. And then we just walk through this. Where do you want to put them when you're making your 4 files? So we can say, well, I want to put them here. Let's put them on the desktop. Okay. In a subfolder called for client, for example. And I don't want to rename them. I don't want to I can include video files, but I don't have any. I want to make them JPEGs, maybe a little bit higher quality than 60, perhaps 75. I want the longest edge to be 1024, which that would fit comfortably, for example, on an iPad. And double that if you're doing Retina display. And I don't mind putting all the copyright information in there, including the location information if those photos had it. And then after it's done, I just want to show me those 4 files. Now, I have built basically this workflow of what I want to happen, and I don't want to have to build it again, so I can add my own preset. And I can say, for example, for web. And that will make a preset that I can just choose in the menu from that point on. And when I say export, it's now making JPEGs of those 4 raw files in all the settings I told it to do, the sizes, and it put them in a folder that it just created on the desktop called For Client. Now I can put these on a thumb drive, put them on a Dropbox, do whatever I want to do. They're still fairly large for web, but you can go in and adjust the settings, bring down the quality, bring down the size if you want. But I like the size of these for general viewing. And there they are. Now, you could have also told it to put a watermark on those photos, which that's kind of a bonus one. This is not one of the 10 things, but you can edit watermarks and put your own custom watermarks in there as well, and use those in all your output and all your printing. All right, last but not least, let's say we do want to email one of these photos or all of these photos. So Lightroom 4 adds the ability to email directly. There's actually an email command right here in the menu. So when we say email photos, We could fill out our address, our subject. We can tell it to either use our default mail program on our computer, or we can go and create an account that Lightroom can use. You'd have to know your mail settings for that. It's going to attach them. We can tell it what quality to use. And if I don't do anything else right now and just hit send, it'll just bring up Apple Mail and let me fill it all out in Apple Mail, because that's where my address book is anyway. But the beauty of it is it's going to take care of all the sizing and all that stuff for me, and get those files ready to go, and bring up my email and attach them to a new email message so that I don't have to go look for them and find them once I have my email up. So that is the 10th thing that people usually want to know how to do in Lightroom. So I hope you've enjoyed this. The 10 things people want to know how to do in Lightroom, or how to get started in Lightroom. The 10 things beginners want to know how to do. And my name is Terry White. Thanks for watching.